wake up every day with hurt and sadness from his actions. I didn't think about what my actions could do when I would have to live with remorse and guilt for the rest of my life.
This is Kyle Anger, the teen who killed a man while playing a dumb prank. Kyle and 4 of his friends were used to hanging out at an overpass and dropping things at unsuspecting motorists for fun. But that day, things turned tragic when a rock that they dropped crashed through the windshield of a passing van, smashing and killing an innocent man. The boys said that it was just a prank and they didn't really mean to hurt anyone, but would the judge buy this? Kenneth Andrew White was a 32-year-old construction worker from Mount Morris, Michigan. He had 4 children who he absolutely adored and was engaged to Amy Cagle, who was the mother of his youngest son. Those who knew Kenneth described him as a stand-up guy and a great dad. His Facebook account is actually filled with pictures of him smiling while spending time with his children. He was very protective of his family and friends, and was a lover of sports, video games, and the outdoors. On the evening of October 18th, 2017, Kenneth was riding home with his friend and boss, Stephen Amther, after a long day at work. Kenneth was on the front passenger seat of the vehicle and was excitedly talking about basketball as they cruised through Interstate 75, not knowing that within a few minutes, his life would be over. At around 8:30 p.m., Kenneth and Stephen were going under an overpass when suddenly something crashed through the windscreen and smashed Kenneth right on the face and chest. Confused as to what was happening, Stephen's first instinct was to keep the vehicle from veering off the road. But when he turned over to his friend, his face turned pale in horror.
We were less than 5 miles from his house, and next thing you know, I'm pulled over trying to keep him from bleeding out.
And he called my brother while sitting on the side of the road and cried, said, "Listen, I'm so sorry. I tried to do my best and I couldn't stop you from bleeding."
Kenneth was bleeding profusely, with his face and chest completely shattered. Stephen said that he tried everything to stop the bleeding, but it was no use. Kenneth was pronounced at a nearby hospital. An autopsy revealed the cause of death to be blunt force trauma.
I don't blame myself what happened. I blame myself like I couldn't do enough.
At the scene of the incident, investigators found a gaping hole in the windscreen of the vehicle that Kenneth had been riding on and a rock the size of a volleyball, weighing at least 6 pounds. Where did this rock come from? It turned out Kenneth's vehicle was not the only one that had been hit by rocks that night.
A man killed on I-75 from a rock apparently thrown over an overpass. He is 32-year-old Kenneth White, and he was on his way home from work when that rock came crashing through the windshield.
7 vehicles in total were hit, both the south and northbound lanes, but it was the van that Kenneth White was in that took the brunt of it. And there could have been more deaths. India Reeves was just seconds behind.
My tire hit it, and it just blew instantly.
Rocks like this one scattered across I-75 at about 8:30 Wednesday night. India Reeves back today to get her car. Her tire blown out by hitting one of the rocks. 4 other cars pulled over at nearly the same time, and 3 other drivers called police after to say they too were hit.
And got out of my vehicle and went to the car behind me. There was a lady in the car, and she said, "Somebody's throwing something over the bridge." And I'm like, "Really?" I noticed a van that I was pulled behind, and I rushed over to see if they were okay.
They were not. The passenger in the van was 32-year-old Kenneth White of Mount Morris, a fiancé and a father to a young boy, coming home from a construction job in All Gray. He was knocked unconscious immediately when a rock came through the windshield. He died at the hospital. Police say all signs point to this being intentional.
Was not anything about the bridge itself. It wasn't concrete chunks from the bridge. We're quite certain of that.
Investigators found about 20 rocks scattered on the scene, and some of them were actually as big as a basketball. But what was even more shocking, it seemed that the rocks had been brought there from somewhere else, meaning that someone had purposely been dropping rocks on passing vehicles. But why would someone do that?
The family of Kenneth White desperate for answers after police say someone threw that rock from an overpass into oncoming traffic. And whoever is responsible is also responsible for White's
As you can imagine, they are devastated. Kenneth White's family says they simply cannot believe what happened. Meanwhile, while they try to hold it together to plan his funeral, they're hoping and praying whoever did this is caught.
Put the doctor on the phone, and they said we did everything we'd do for him, and he died.
You're playing Russian roulette with people's lives.
The family of 32-year-old Kenneth White at a loss for words tonight after police say someone hurled debris from an overpass on I-75 in Mount Morris, hitting the car carrying White. Him.
I seriously just still can't figure out what goes through someone's head to want to just go out and throw stuff off of a bridge with oncoming traffic.
The news of Kenneth's sudden and bizarre shook his family and friends, as they couldn't understand how it happened and why. Why would anyone mess with people's lives like that? Kenneth's fiancée, Amy, was also totally heartbroken, remembering Kenneth as the love of her life, and saying that whoever dropped the rock destroyed the lives of so many people.
I just hope they realize their actions and how many lives they torn apart.
A GoFundMe account was set up to help the family with funeral expenses, and within 6 days, they had raised over $68,000 towards their goal of $90,000. Meanwhile, police had ruled Kenneth's death as a homicide and had begun an intense investigation to find the people responsible. They even offered a reward of $2,500 to anyone with information that would help bring the culprit or culprits to justice. And soon enough, they got a tip from Facebook that led them to arrest 5 teens. 17-year-old Kyle Anger, 16-year-olds Mark Sekelsey and McCaden Payne, and 15-year-olds Trevor Gray and Alexander Miller. All 5 were from Clio, Michigan, where they attended a local high school. The teens apparently confessed to throwing rocks off the overpass, but you would never imagine the reason they gave as to why they did it. Apparently, they claimed they were playing some silly game they made up called overpassing, in which the person that hits a car earns dinger points. They would even bet money to see which one of them would hit the most cars. How completely messed up is that? And it gets worse. Before the tragic incident, these brats had actually done it 10 times on different overpasses across town. They would collect huge rocks from a end road and then load them into a pickup truck before driving to an overpass and dropping them on unsuspecting motorists. Scaringly, investigators found rocks weighing as much as 20 pounds inside the truck, and apparently, none of these 5 sickos thought that what they were doing would hurt someone.
It's not a prank, it's second-degree murder. I don't think anybody's laughing, and I think if there's any admonition, any warning that both David and I can give, it's telling young people that you make a bad decision, you could be spending the rest of your life in prison. This is not a prank.
The younger teens claimed that Kyle Anger was the one that came up with the game, and that he was the one that dropped the rock that killed Kenneth. Police said that after hitting the car, the teens fled the scene and went to a local McDonald's to eat. The next day, when they learned that someone had died, they reportedly started texting each other on Snapchat saying, "We could go to prison for life for this. Everyone lay low and no one rat us out." Then one of them texted, "No one saw us. If everyone shuts up, we won't get caught."
I don't believe that this was a deliberate attempt to take somebody's life. It was a willful and wanton act that resulted in somebody's death. These people should have known better. These people should have realized that their actions would cause great bodily harm or death. And under Michigan law, that's second-degree murder.
All 5 teens were charged with second-degree murder, destruction of property, among other charges. 4 of the boys, Trevor, McCaden, Alexander, and Mark, accepted plea deals to a reduced charge of manslaughter. During their sentencing hearing, their defense tried to get the judge to sentence them as juveniles, but the judge was just not having it.
The 4 teens in court today were ages 15 to 17 years old when this happened. Their defense attorneys tried to convince the judge they should be sentenced as juveniles. The judge dramatically disagreed.
The proposal for juvenile sentencing is rejected.
That applause came from the family of the young man. 4 teens in court today have been held in juvenile detention since it happened, and they were all students at Clio High School. They were originally charged with second-degree murder, but pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of manslaughter. The sentence sends them to adult prison. 32-year-old Kenneth White was killed when a 6-pound rock crashed through the windshield in the car he was riding in.
Kenneth is getting his justice he deserves. My baby he's happy now. He can rest.
The decision by the judge to sentence the 4 teens as adults was, however, thrown out by a court of appeal, who said that the judge had exceeded his authority when he rejected the deal. So the 4 boys ended up getting 1 year of probation plus 3 years that they had already spent in custody. Meanwhile, Kyle Anger, who was the one who actually threw the rock, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. During his sentencing hearing, Kenneth's devastated parents gave emotional victim impact statements, describing how Kenneth's untimely death had affected them.
You have destroyed all of my life, or his life. You destroyed mine and my family, and his family, his kids. And yet you still have not even said you're sorry for what you've done yourself. No one else whatsoever.
You know, I don't get my 10-o'clock phone calls anymore. I don't get to see my son. Yes, they may get sentenced. They may get sentenced, but 3, 4, 5 years down the road, they still get to walk again. They still get to talk to their families. They still get to have a life. They took that away from us, and they took that away from all of us. And I don't know. I don't know if I can ever feel in my heart to ever forget that.
When he was given a chance to speak, Kyle read out an insincere apology, saying that he didn't really mean to hurt anyone.
I wake up every day with a hurt sadness for my actions. It's never meant to bother me. I didn't think about what my actions could do when I would have to live with remorse and guilt for the rest of my life.
Now, get this. Despite the fact that his actions actually killed a man, Kyle got 3 to 20 years in prison, but was released on parole in January 2021 after serving the minimum sentence. But, like that's not already a slap in the face for Kenneth's family, the other teens had their slates wiped clean after completing their probation, meaning that they could now go on with their lives like nothing ever happened. Which, if you ask me, is totally unfair to the family. But what do you think about this case? Let me know in the comment section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.